I'm Nate, Oregon State University, Small Farms Extension, and I'm going to sort of wrangle the 6 of us who are going to talk about cover crops in different ways. Okay, so first off, I'm going to start this. It sounds kind of negative, but Doug and I work for I guess we're on the board of the Western Cover Crop Council, which created a tool to help people select cover crop species for their environment. It is not going to solve all the problems, but we're going to talk about that tool today. And one, I'm super informal, and we're going to get through all the, maybe the precursor or the introduction stuff, look at the tool, and then have some farmers come up and talk about their actual experience with cover cropping. So I'm going to skip all the, a lot of this stuff, but I'll tell you what we're going to look at. We'll talk about cover crops, why we use them, which there's a long list of things that we all kind of know why we use them. Then we'll go to the actual decision tool, and we'll walk through the decision tool itself, which is online, and I'll put up a QR code. If you have your phone, you can do it on your phone. If you have a computer, you can follow along, and then we'll also repeat it up here on the computer. And then we're going to let some farmers come up and talk about a project that Rob at Viva Farms and some farmers worked on with cover cropping, and then David's going to talk about another farmer about his use of cover crops in this area. Okay, so cover crops, why use them? If you all went to James's talk earlier, the simple way to describe it is that growing plants is good. That's why we use them. But there's a long list of reasons why we might actually use a cover crop. And I'm not going to go into detail on all these because I really want to show the tool and listen to those who are using cover crops talk about their experience with it. But here's a typical list of things you hear about or people talk about why they're using cover crops. Protect soil from erosion, whether that's wind or water, depending on what region you're in. You're adding soil organic matter, improving water infiltration, nutrient management, weed suppression, on and on and on. That's why we use them. Growing plants is good. Okay, so if you have a phone or you have a laptop, you can go to westerncovercrops.org, and this will take you to the actual species selector. There's 2 ways to get there. Go through the westerncovercrops.org, or you can actually go to covercrop-selector.org. If you have your phone or maybe your computer would work as well, you can click on the QR code. That will actually take you here to the Western Cover Crops Council page, and then you just click on the Try the Species Selector. That will take you to this. It's a map of the United States. There are 4 other councils: Northeast Cover Crop Council, Southeast Cover Crop Council, the Midwest Cover Crop Council, and the Western. So all of the states in the United States of America have information on cover crops. We're going to specifically talk about the Western region. So you can select the state that you want to find information on cover crops in here. Select your state. It's pretty straightforward. Once you have selected the state, it'll highlight the state, Washington, as I've selected there. There are kind of 2 ways to go about this. The first way is I just want to see some plants. What are cover crop species that are listed from the species selector tool in my area? And I just go down to Browse Cover Crops. This is not giving you a recommendation. It's just going to show you some information on the entire list of cover crops that are listed for that state. So Browse Cover Crops down on the bottom, and you will go to this page, which will give you a list of the cover crops that have been vetted by researchers, farmers, industry individuals in how many years? 3 years long? How long did it take?
It took a long time.
Yeah, it took a long time to get all that information into here, but this is vetted information on those species, and it gives you a long list. There's also some other additional information that I will talk about later, but you can see we're just browsing to see what's available in our region. You can then select any one of those, and you just click it. There's also some other functionality that I'll talk about later, but we're just kind of doing the simple approach. So I'm clicking on buckwheat because I want to learn about buckwheat. I click on buckwheat, and it tells me the scientific name, and then it gives a description of the growth habit of the buckwheat itself. This description is based on use in cover cropping scenarios. So it could be like botanically a little bit different if you were growing it normally, but all that information is taken from data from individuals who've used this species in a cover crop scenario. You also get a couple different pictures. Some of the species will have 5 or 6 different pictures. Some just have a couple. So it tells you about the plant. In this example, a quick-growing warm season annual reaches heights between 2 and 3 feet. You get some information on the crop itself. If you scroll down, you get all kinds of different additional information on that species. So the life cycle, it's annual. Its optimum growth temperature minimum is 65 degrees Fahrenheit. They consider this to produce dry matter at a low rate in general. You get environmental tolerances, like does it tolerate drought conditions? Is it good in heat? Does it ever have winter survival? And you can look at all this information, and on these ratings, Doug, remind me, 1 is the lowest, right? Yeah. So the higher, as the bars go up, it means it has more tolerance, in this case, better drought tolerance. So the higher and the increased number of bars means it's greater at doing whatever that thing is. Okay, so good drought tolerance, good heat tolerance, never survives in the winter. If you keep scrolling down, you get planting information and additional information on the soil conditions that it grows optimally at. That doesn't mean it won't grow in other conditions. These are just been vetted by individuals saying it grows the best in this type of condition. They will give you a seeding rate, so 60 pounds per acre, frost seeding, no, seeding depth max, seeding methods, seeds per pound, all kinds of information. Keep scrolling down. It will provide you information on acceptable termination methods and ways to kill the cover crop so that it's out of your system when you don't want it to be there. It also gives you information on the actual termination windows, days between termination and planting, its annual life cycle, probably more information than you would ever want to know, but all that is just by selecting the information on the species itself. And that's just if you want to browse. You haven't saved anything. You're just kind of looking at all the plants that are available to your region in that state. If you want to have a goal for the cover crop, which is advised to have a goal when you're using cover crops, then you can use the Get a Recommendation tool. So you're still selecting the state, and instead of Browse Cover Crops, you select Get a Recommendation. It will take you to this page, and you are going to then enter your location. So you can either enter your address in the address bar here if you want to. You can painstakingly pan over to where you are and select the location for where you're at. Or you can use current location if you don't mind the computer knowing where you are, and it will just ID you through the GPS. You can also create different areas of use. So instead of just selecting one location like is selected here in Salem, Oregon, you can actually go to an area where your farm is at and then select and create squares and multiple squares. So like I've got a field here, I've got another field here. What this does when you get more specific to the location and then the area of use, it's going to bring up, so you do all that. So here's field location. I actually picked this near here, Spokane, North Lehman Road, or whatever that is. Hit next in that upper section, upper right-hand section on the site, or down at the bottom there as well. Either way, it pulls the information from the Surgo data, which is the soil data, from the location that you pinned, and brings it in and tells you the soil type, which James, thank you for joining us in the back, so eloquently talked about earlier.
How did you select the location?
Select the location. There's a number of different ways. You can enter an address here, or you can pan. So you hit next, and it will bring up that Sergo data. There was a bug at the time when I was putting this presentation together, as things happen. I think it was finished. I think this was just in Safari. So it's supposed to pull first frost date and last frost date from your location, but that function wasn't working in Safari. I believe it was working in Chrome though. And it was on a list of things to get fixed. So that information would be there if it wasn't busted. It will give you precipitation, and it also identifies the drainage class of that soil. You can, if you know something has changed, because there can be some information that changes, or something's happened in that area, you can adjust this here, or you can adjust it later. But it will bring all that information, and it shows you, it illustrates it, it demonstrates it illustrates those conditions at your site. So once you have that information, you hit next. This is where you're actually going to select the goals, and you'll see on the left-hand side, cover crop goals and cash crop growing window. You can select up to a maximum of 3 goals. So if I go back here, you'll see closes canopy, forage harvest value, nitrogen fixation, nitrogen scavenging. You can pick 3 different ones. If you select it first, it's going to put that as it's going to prioritize whatever that goal is as number 1. And then number 2, and then number 3. But you have to go back in if you want to change the order of your goals by deselecting them. So 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, whatever you want to do. Maximum of 3 goals. This window over here, cash crop growing window, is when your cash crop is in the ground. And you'll see later when the information comes up what it does. It's actually just creating like some bars to show you where you shouldn't be planting because your cash crop is in the ground. But you don't have to do that, but it gives you the option to show you how to plan that out. The other 2 options, or the questions it's going to ask on the cover crop goals, is when are you going to actually put the crop in the ground? Spring, summer, fall. Will you irrigate? Yes or no? In the cash crop growing window, then it will also ask you, is your cash crop an annual or perennial system? And I'll show you what that does later on because it creates a calendar basically. Okay, so in this example, I just selected nitrogen fixation as the first goal, closes canopy as a second, and the third is forage harvest value, planting season in the spring, no irrigation, annual cropping system. And then I just hit next. And what it does is it's ranking the goals based upon the first goal here. So this, and actually I think I put a slide in here, so let me just focus on this and not get too far ahead of myself. It's showing you the first goal, the second goal, and how, let's see, how relevant the crop meets that goal, and then the third goal. But if correct me on this, Doug, because it's only sorting on goal 1. Is that right? I can't remember.
Not sure.
So I believe that it's actually only sorting on goal 1. It's just then showing you goal 2 and goal 3. So you could go down and decide what is best. But I think it automatically sorts just on goal 1. So for example, you've got red clover, P, because I put nitrogen scavenging or nitrogen fixation, I think, as the number 1 goal. So you've got red clover, P, vetch, and then goal 2, you'll see whatever I selected in goal 3. So, yeah. So then, I don't get too far ahead of myself. Those are the goals. You can then look, there's a legend on this side bar. You can click this and it'll give you the goals that you selected. And I'll go over these filters here in a second. But you'll see the colors are illustrated here on what it's actually showing you. So this is the rain-fed planting window. And you'll see that it's just like April through May, but it's giving you a sense of when to put that into the ground. And then you've got irrigation planting and cash crop growing window. I'll show you later. It just kind of creates a colored bar here. But it's just showing you when to put that crop into the ground. Okay, so if you hover over any of these colored sections, you get more information. basically throughout the tool itself. If you just hover the mouse over it, you'll gain some more information and the different, well, I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so if you go back and you're curious, you can put in your actual cash crop growing window, and it just creates this like highlighted bar to show you when you're supposed to have your cash crop in the ground. It's pretty straightforward. On the options, so you can select and filter the list that resulted from your goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, or whatever it is, and filter through that based upon some other conditions or whatever you're interested in. And that's pretty straightforward here. On the left-hand side, it's in that filter box. Do you want to filter by drought tolerance, by flood tolerance, by heat tolerance? So that list that you created can be further refined by using those filter buttons. You can also filter by ease of establishment, growth in cool temperatures, quick growth, root architecture, root depth. So it gives you a lot of different options to further filter that list of species that was selected based upon your state and then your location and your goals in this case. But you can always just go back and browse as well. There is a way to save these. If you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You just select over here where it says My Crops, click the plus button, and it creates like a little, it's basically a saved section of the crops that you are interested in. Yes?
Can you tell me what this legend, what the colors of this legend mean? What are the yellow bars again?
Yes, the yellow bar, I'll go back here just to point it out. Yeah. Here we go. So yellow is the rain-fed planting window.
Okay.
And if you have a green, if you're messing around, and the legend is, on this page on the left-hand side, and it'll give you all the information. Yeah.
It's totally different on the phone.
Yeah. Sorry, I did it on my laptop.
Okay,
I should have put the...
Again, the yellow bar is when to plant it.
Correct.
That quick? The cover crop?
Well, that's the range. Plant.
It's a planting range.
That's not.
Then it's going to be growing during my.
Well, he selected a summer.
Yeah, sorry, I should. So I selected a planting season of spring, and I selected I'm not going to irrigate. So it's using that information to select when I would put that into the ground, based upon my just random selections. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
It also shows you even what you didn't, whatever, even the ones that aren't your goal.
That's correct.
They're shaded out.
Yep, that's right. They will. So if you look down here, thank you for pointing that out. It will show you other options down here, but it's like lightened. They're not meeting the goal, right?
Well, no, the clover would meet the goal, but it's not meeting your planting window.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. It's not meeting the planting window, but it will give you the option. It's just grayed out. These are the filters that you can filter on. Additionally, I said that save crops. And this creates another section in the tool itself of like, oh, I'm interested in this. Maybe I'll come back. But it gives you a way to save that. There is another, what I didn't put in here. You can create an account with this that you can save it and go back and, it's another account you can create. But you don't have to if that's annoying. If you like accounts, you can create it and save everything. But this is really important. So if you're on there and you're like, this is great, or this sucks, or whatever, whatever it is, please fill out the feedback because we are continually working with the developers. And when that stuff comes in every month or every 2 months or whatever, they're going to update it and make improvements to it. And the other cover crop councils, that has been going on for like the other tools.
It's fairly new, like a couple of years. This platform. The Midwest Cover Crop Council has been around for 20 or more years.
Yeah.
They had a different version, but this platform is a couple of years old.
And they're constantly updating it and making improvements to it. Yeah. Yeah. So don't hesitate to put feedback in there. And now Doug, we'll talk about that in a second. Doug is going to just kind of do a little live.
Yeah, I mean, we thought we would just go back over it. So go to the Western Cover Crop Council. That's the best way to enter this. Try the species selector tool. And just because of time, I'm just going to go to our farm and play around a little bit. So it's important to enter your state, obviously, because that's where you're going to find like your address. But I'm going to get a recommendation. We had state groups. So within each state, we got together and talked about it. So it always, when you enter a state, it'll take you to the capital. So we're in Olympia right now. Let's go to our little research farm. How do I can pan up to our little area here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this polygon tool. And then you just click once to do your corners. So this is kind of like the web soil survey, but better. All right, so I've got my area. First frost-free date, October 12th. Last frost date, May 1st. We got 164 frost-free days. Okay, so as Nate mentioned, again, this is just repetition. I'm just going to say everything he said one more time. So it's based on the web soil survey, what he said, the Surgo data. That's this database of soil data. It's saying I'm in a well-drained, I'm in a Puyallup fine sandy loam, is the soil type, and I am in a well-drained soil. So if I don't agree with that, I can change that. I can override that. And as James said, you know, this web soil survey is only so good. You might have some better information, but it's kind of generally good. So we'll stay with that. Okay, I'm going to just pick some goals. I love nitrogen, so I'm going to go with Nate there. And we've been doing some grazing lately. And what else? Let's do biomass, because so many cover crop things are related to biomass. Where is that one? Increases soil organic matter? Yeah. And I'm going to do a fall planting, and I'm not going to irrigate. And then I'm going to plant on May 1st. And I'm going to harvest, doesn't really, May 20th. We'll stick with that. Oh, okay, that won't work. Annual. This is why we make slides, just in case things don't work. All right. So I got a list of cover crops. These are all legumes because I put that first thing as it was going to be nitrogen fixing. I'm going to want to plant it. You know, my idea would be planting it in September.
Doug, would you click on the goals too, just to illustrate?
Yeah, I was going to go back. Okay, so I looked at my initial thing, and you know, I'm like, well, what if I change my mind? And I really want to emphasize the increased organic matter. So then I basically just deselect, well, let's deselect nitrogen. So now good grazing is my first. And if I go to organic matter, but I still want some nitrogen and some grazing. Did that work? Oh yeah, so now I have, I still have some legumes in there, but now I have some non-legumes that have showed up as possibilities, like winter rye, triticale. Quite a few have showed up at this point. So to narrow this list down, yeah, you could do some filtering. You could just start sort of shopping. Anything else?
You say shopping, is that actual putting real dollars to what you just put up there?
There's no price information in here. By shopping, I guess I would like to learn more about it. You know, you click on it, and then Nate sort of showed this window, so you get a lot of information. about it here.
So do you folks have any recommendations as far as sourcing these seeds?
I get cover crop seeds from a few different places. Green cover, Heron seeds. I get from quite a few different places. I usually look at Osborne. They're like local if they have it. And then I look for organic certified seed. And then I kind of shop around. I'm usually looking for a specific variety of cover crop, so that makes it harder to find sometimes.
Right.
But the tool doesn't have it.
The tool is not
doesn't
variety
have it.
level yet, yeah.
And there's no pricing on it. It's just straightforward with the cover crop, the species illustration.
I'd say this is kind of for like a beginning, maybe to early intermediate cover crop user. So certainly admit that, right? Like it's not going to take you to like that. If you've been doing this for a long time and you already know, like you've used cover crops quite a bit, this may not be as helpful. So, but if you're very new to it, and I kind of like how it does give you that whole universe. So maybe you might want to see like something new might show up.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Wow.
All right.
Do you want me to switch the presentation?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Rob Smith. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations at Viva Farms. Viva Farms, I know I see lots of friendly faces in the audience, but if you're not familiar with us, we're a farm business incubator program in Western Washington. Thank you. We do provide support to farmers to establish new farm businesses and scale those businesses over time and launch those businesses. We focus, and our farmers focus primarily, we do certified organic production, mixed vegetables and small fruits, direct market. And we are a bilingual program, so we work with a lot of people who were farm workers and are now transitioning to farm ownership. So part of our programming, we've got a lot of experience with cover crops. We do a lot of teaching about cover crops to our farmer participants, and then sort of require cover cropping amongst our farmers because people are kind of moving land around a lot, and we want people to inherit land that's been taken care of and reaping those rewards that cover crops offer. So I do want to talk a little bit around a specific project. So saying we generally are like promoting cover cropping and helping people do that, but I want to talk a little bit of a project that is just wrapping up. It's a 4-year project that was funded through a conservation innovation grant through the NRCS, and it was called From Farmers to Soil Health Managers. So I just want to talk a little bit about that because it was this project of doing on-farm trials, mostly looking at cover crops, and kind of wanted to share some of the results. So. Just real quick, I'm just going to introduce the project pretty quickly, and then we're going to hear from a couple of our farmers who participated. So this, as I mentioned, it was funded through the NRCS. It's a 4-year project. We worked really closely with partners from Washington State University, the Skagit Conservation District, and Transect Films. So we were producing a documentary about this project. That's almost ready, and I'm hopefully going to show a trailer for it here in just a moment. And then we worked with 11 producers who were part of the project, and the farmers kind of came to the project, developed research questions, and then we worked with staff to help, partners from WSU. Doug was on that project as well, and worked with people to help farmers design robust on-farm trials, like scientifically run trials where they could test out their hypotheses and kind of do a controlled study of a question that they had. And as I mentioned, the large majority of them were related to cover crops, and all of them used cover crops. If it wasn't the central focus, it was a part of the trial. And I would mention that the project focused on soil health management systems. That is like an NRCS term that I believe has 4 principles, which are minimizing disturbance of soil, increasing biodiversity, maintaining living roots, and maximizing soil cover. And so, actively cover cropping, can kind of meet all 4 of those definitions depending on how it fits into your overall kind of rotation and production systems. So again, we had some kind of main categories that farmers were choosing from. And just some examples of those were comparing cover crop varieties. So for instance, like, that tool we just looked at, farmers were able to kind of do studies kind of comparing side by side 2, 3, 4 varieties and look at the soil health implications of those. Other ones were cover cropping in between alleyways and perennial plantings. So we'll hear from Francisco Farias in a moment about his cover cropping in between raspberry rows and kind of doing comparative study of soil health impacts as well as economic impacts. Tillage reduction, so we'll hear from Nate Eldur Heron around reducing tillage using cover crops, but kind of substituting tillage series where Nate will talk about it, but so we'll get into that and some other examples. I do want to mention that the project was kind of the main ways we were looking at soil health. There was lab-based indicators, so there was significant soil testing that happened throughout the project. And we were looking at, all these, what I consider sort of like new and maybe cutting edge tests, right? So these weren't just like NPK soil tests. These were measuring biological activity. They were measuring like protein. They were measuring respiration rates and measuring a lot of biological activity. So a lot of these new tests that could kind of quantify soil health in a way. And then also these in-field assessments. So we were doing a lot of, like, here's an example of aggregate stability test comparing in Francisco's field aggregate stability between rows that had been in cover crop with rows that had been tilled more extensively. So there was kind of this in-field applied, like farmer-led assessments and then also lab assessments. I'd also just mention too that one cool aspect of this project is it had significant support for farmers to participate. So I think we had about like $160,000 that we were able to pay to farmers to participate in this, which was fantastic. And I think I'd love to see more projects like that, like on-farm trials that help support that kind of work. So just a few photos. This is our group touring the soil science lab at WSU Research Station in Mount Vernon. This is Deirdre LaHue, who's a soil scientist, and we kind of did all these tour of the lab, and we're kind of checking out, like, for a lot of these farmers, kind of getting into a lab and seeing like how are we measuring and understanding soil health. I think was a pretty cool experience. We were able to kind of look at, this is the Eldur site at Mount Vernon, which is long-term
Agroecological.
What is it?
Agroecological.
Yeah, so there's a network of these sites around the state where they're doing long-term research on soil health and other kind of research sites. So yeah, our cohort would get together. We would kind of go to all the locations of all the farmers who were participating, and kind of have lots of discussions and sort of do field walks and observations and comparisons in the field. Extensive soil testing, as I mentioned. So just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of like the evaluations that we did. So I mentioned there was soil health evaluation on this project. Looking at like what were the long-term changes in soil health, and I also learned that soil health is really slow to change. So like the project was 4 years, and even over the course of that, a lot of like what we were able to observe was we would just kind of start to see the very beginning of a trend, but it wasn't like, oh my God, my soil totally changed in that short period. But there was also an economic piece. So we were doing kind of reviews of people's practices and comparing cover cropping versus not. And okay, if you're doing cover cropping, what is the cost? What's the cost difference between running your rototiller versus running a mower? What's the cost of the seed? So trying to understand, this may have a really positive impact on my soil health, but if it's not economically viable, then it's much less likely that that's going to be, ultimately adopted. So we're kind of trying to take a whole look at it. And then a social evaluation around sort of what leads people to engage in cover crop practices and others. So there are a couple, we've got some different fact sheets here that we've developed about the project. If anyone's interested, there's a whole stack in the back as well. We hosted an on-farm field day. There was 50 people came and we looked at all the trials, and which was really cool. And as I mentioned, we're producing this documentary. The documentary film is going to be ready in the new year, but we have a little trailer for it that I was going to show. That's cool. Think of the joke, this is the last time to talk to me before I'm a movie star. So, I won't forget you though. I'll remember you. So I don't, that thing was on that
Nick's in the
speaker.
back there. I think maybe he's still there.
Can I play it? Well,
Maybe.
we've got sound, but if we turn it on.
Here it comes.
I can try it.
Will it
No,
work?
don't touch it. I saw the back of that. Let the professionals do it. It's not soil.
So stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming out next early January. So, yeah, follow Viva Farms if you want. We're going to try to put it out in the world that you can follow. So we wanted to hear now from a couple of farmers. We're going to try it one more time.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Francisco. Bueno, tuve la oportunidad de estar en el programa de cobertura aquí con Rob. Nosotros le decimos Beto en español, pero Rob. Y con el equipo de... ¿Me puede traducir?
Sí, yeah. So my name is Francisco Farias, and I was happy to be a participant in the project. Cropping project.
A mi parte fuera de sembrar cobertura y estar discando, redetileando así surcos de raspberries. Yo sembro raspberries, entonces era ver cuál era la diferencia, crecer la cobertura y no crecer la cobertura, estar barbechando y estar cortando la cobertura. Entonces, mi primer año, mi experiencia fue de que hubo diferentes malezas que intentaban salir, entonces era cuidar la cobertura.
So Francisco, so his trial was in between raspberry rows. This is just kind of a quick overview, but he did two different treatments. So one was cover cropping in between raspberry rows, and then the other one was rototilling in between those raspberry rows, and that the rototilling is sort of like his normal practice, right? So during the growing season, would just be tilling. ¿Con qué frecuencia usa el rototilling? ¿Cada mes o?
En primavera hasta junio, hasta cada 2 semanas.
Okay,
cada
so
2
every
semanas.
2 weeks in sort of spring, and then that would kind of slow.
Yeah.
His trial was, so he had 2 treatments here. He did 4 replicates of the trial. So that's kind of an important piece of the on-farm trials was as randomized replicated treatments to kind of control for differences in the soil itself and across the farm. So this is just sort of a map, right, of his treatments where, the gray was where he was cover cropping, and then B was where he was kind of doing his regular practice. And so, there was 4 replicates, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was randomized in that, the order of them wasn't always the same. It could kind of flip so that by doing that process, any differences you see, you could kind of chalk it up to that treatment versus just natural change over the soil or a sandy section or whatever it is. And then here's just a map of his farm from above, and you can kind of see these kind of funky raspberry rows here in between.
Este año hicimos una práctica para ver el surco que tiene cobertura y el que no tiene cobertura. Entonces, la primer cosecha fue 43 half flats versus 37, donde no tenía cobertura. Segunda cosecha ya fue 37 versus 29, que no era cobertura. Y así sucesivamente fue bajando, pero siempre estuvo en un nivel más alto el lugar que tuvo cobertura.
Okay. Francisco was just talking about how this was the final year of the project, and he did a comparison where the rows that had cover crop on either side, his first harvest was like 41 half flats per row of raspberries, and that didn't have cover crop was like 37. And then his second harvest, he had 37 half flats where there was cover crop and like 29 where there wasn't. So he saw like a noticeable difference.
Usamos el plástico al principio para proteger la maleza, pero ya el siguiente año lo quitamos y todavía tuvimos problemas con maleza saliendo entre los surcos, pero al tercer año, cuando ya la cobertura estuvo mejorando y tuvimos controlando la maleza, que ya no teníamos tanta maleza, ni en la cobertura, ni en la planta del surco. Y lo que fui mirando a lo largo del tiempo, cada vez que cortaba la cobertura, descomponiendo la cobertura y iba haciendo como abono orgánico en medio de las plantas. Y donde no tenía cobertura, miraba como una parte, como este año pude ver como la parte de la cobertura iba tomando más vida y la parte que no tiene cobertura iba muriendo. Tenía menos maleza que al principio, pero a la vez también iba saliendo la misma maleza más débil, más amarilla y la tierra más compactada.
Mm-hmm. So you were saying at first his raspberries were in plastic mulch, and then that was removed. And so, he was kind of concerned and did notice that there was a lot more weed pressure kind of under the rows, and that sometimes where the cover crop was, like the cover crop was kind of wanting to get in there a little bit. But when he was cutting that, he was noticing that a lot of that, the biomass essentially was kind of almost used as a little bit of a mulch and would decompose. And he was noticing that there was like a return of nutrients there, and that he has, a sense of that contributed to the increase in yield. And that over time, even though there was more weed pressure at the beginning, that actually kind of evened out. So some of like the initial challenges kind of were
Rye, veg, and what was the mix?
Yeah, it's rye, veg, and
It was on there. It
puse un poco de clover, un poco, y sí. Y ya bueno, pues tuve mucha experiencia y mi experiencia fue como aquella vez, este año. Entonces ya tuvimos control en la maleza de aquí, porque no era cobertura lo que salía, sino misma maleza, pero ya tuvimos control y ya teníamos más cobertura en los surcos, en medio de los surcos. Entonces mi experiencia fue que si voy a tener como la blueberry o voy a tener raspberry que dura 2-3 años, voy a usar la cobertura en medio, porque ¿para qué estar comprando composta si puedes sembrar la cobertura y la misma cobertura te está dando el composta? Y
Yeah, so just saying that he's, going forward, if he's going to be planting some blueberries and then or in other raspberry plantings, he's seen the difference that whereas before he was having to buy fertilizer and compost to apply, he's now seeing that difference, and the cover crop itself is providing a lot of that fertility for less cost. So it's something that he's
Yep. Ujú.
Yeah. This is it.
Sí, sí,
Yeah.
sí, es a los principios, ¿verdad? Fue el año antepasado, este es este año ya.
Photos of like
Ya el segundo y el tercer año. Yo estaba pequeña también la Raspberry, en este año ya estaba más. Ujú.
Now the raspberries are more
Ujú.
mature.
Entonces, como era bueno, pues gracias, tuve la oportunidad de hacer experimentos aquí con el equipo de Viva y equipo de WSU.
So, yeah.
Entonces,
Thank you to the partners at WSU for
ya,
supporting.
y ya, bueno, pues para mí fue una buena experiencia y creo que voy a seguir practicando la cobertura.
For me, it was a great experience.
Mm.
Keep on using cover crops.
Cover crops. Ya, creo que es todo lo que tengo que decir. Bueno, muchas gracias. Ajá.
Because they were annual cover crops, did you have to replant them or did you just mow them and let them grow through the summer?
Lo hice una vez. Ajá.
Pero a cada año tuviste.
No, no, solamente este último año.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they would just come back.
Just have they come back?
Ya, come back. Ajá. Solo este año ya sí tuve que hacerlo. Ujú. Yeah, only one time. Ujú. One time, and the second year I do one more time this year.
All right.
All right, gracias. Thank you.
Now we're just going to hear from Nate
bless you.
Miner from the Heron Farm. Who can tell you about this.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So my name is Nate Miner, and my farm name is Eldur Heron Farm. I am a solo operation, and I actually do a huge amount of stuff by hand. This is a wheel hoe that was originally manufactured in 1919, and I've replaced a small amount of the hardware, but the handles are original. They're wood ash handles, and I use it for various different cultivating practices. Here I'm reshaping the walkways. It's kind of hard to see, but there is like a big shoe that is normally used on a tractor, but I just strapped it to the wheel hoe because it fits the whole width of the walkway perfectly. It allows me to hit it all at once and reshape it. But really what I was looking at doing is figuring out, in the grand scheme of cultivating, we tend to have like a larger schedule through the season, and how we tend to do cover crops in Skagit County, and especially at Viva Farms, is you work up the ground in the spring and you prep beds and you do your annual vegetables throughout the season, and then come like late September, early October, you flip that back into a cover crop. And that flipping tends to literally be you have to go out and cultivate the field after you've mowed down your old crops, and after you've taken care of that mowing and you've done maybe some disking or some other groundwork to get it ready for that cover crop, then we would broadcast the seed and get it sown in lightly with, I would use a perfecta on just the basket part and just lightly roll it so that it would push some of those seeds down. And that method worked pretty great. It was pretty reliable, but a downside to broadcasting is you are going to end up with thicker spots and thinner spots, and it is kind of challenging to even it out across your field, especially if you start to do larger acreage. I am on a really small scale, and I did a very small trial. I did that mostly because I'm limited on space, but also I just wanted to have something that I could apply to both farmers that are similar size to me, but also hopefully scale it up to larger farmers. Because I did use big tractors and larger equipment that you would use on something much larger than what I'm working on. So what I was really looking at doing was taking out that fall tillage. Just not do the tillage in the fall and use a no-till grain drill right after I mow. You can do it the same day, you can do it within minutes after mowing, and you can just roll that no-till grain drill right over all the crop residue, all the pieces that might be left. It doesn't seem to matter how wet the soil is really. Obviously, if it's super mucky, your tractor's probably gonna get stuck, and that's a bigger problem than the grain drill not working. So in general, it works pretty reliably, and it's much faster. You don't have to do that groundwork and wait potentially. And in the fall, that's a big deal because in especially Western Washington, it can flip from being dry as a bone in early October to wet as a swamp by the end of October. So you do have a very short amount of time to be able to get in there and get that cover crop established. So this is a similar map to kind of what Francisco developed. We all did somewhat similar designs as far as doing a random replicated trial. I also had just 2 treatments, but I only did 3 replicates. And that was probably just because I was limited a bit on space. And here's actually the hand-drawn map that I wrote first, and then we made the nicer spreadsheet version. And so here's kind of what it looked like mid-season during probably one of the better years. Each year was a little different, but what I was growing kind of during the main season was buckwheat as a grain. It is used as a cover crop, but I am finding it to be a fabulous grain. And this is, I want to say like 4 to 6 weeks after the seeds were in the ground. Already has a canopy, very well established, out competing anything that might be growing next to it. And originally I was going to have fava beans as a separate crop that then I would rotate who was in which block. Like this block would swap this block each season, just so I was getting a little bit of rotation going. But unfortunately, that very first season, the fava beans that I tried to sow did not come up. It's still a little bit of a mystery, but my best guess is that the timing was not great for fava beans. Fava beans need a cold, cooler environment to get established, and I tried to sow these guys, I think it was early June, and it was just getting too warm, I think was what kind of happened to them. Still not entirely sure, but during the fall and winter, what I would sow is a rye veg cover crop, and it's lush and green, and it's amazing. I love growing that combo. It's very cold hardy. I've seen it handle single-digit Fahrenheit temps with no snow protection, just bare blades of grass and veg out in single-digit Fahrenheits for a week or 2. No real problems. They bounce back. They'll heal from that cold, and yeah, these are just some great examples of some of the soil sampling that we did. And I use a flail mower to terminate the cover crop. I also use it to terminate or reduce the crop residue down to nothing, basically. These little pieces that get broken down by that flail mower are very easy to decompose. Makes it much easier for those smaller organisms that we know are down there, you just can't really see them. When the pieces get this size, it's just so much easier to get it worked in and get it to disappear. Also got to use a spader. This is like more of a rototill style spader, where it does kind of spin, but it's a fabulous tool. You can work up the ground in one pass, and it can be made into beds pretty much right away. You can plant into it very quickly. I still like to give it a rest period because I know right after I've created all this disturbance, that's maybe not the best time to run right over everything again. And it's great to let those guys that are going to eat whatever just got worked in there, give them a chance to actually start chewing on that stuff. And yeah, and this is a little bit more detail on the wheel hoe. I have other attachments for it, so this is actually kind of the original tines. I had to build a new block here. There's like a wood block that I actually use now because the metal bracket snapped. I'm good at breaking tools. Also really good at fixing them. But yeah, this is a fabulous tool. It allows me to flip up these outer tines and go a little bit narrower. So I only have 3 tines in the dirt, and that allows for me to squeeze in between some tighter rows. Or if I do need to cover a broader area, I can flip those guys back down and cover more like 10 inches or so. And yeah, it's got the original steel wheel, but I did have to replace that wheel. I bent it, so I put a bike tire on. This is some of the buckwheat that I grow. It's a tartary type, and as it transitions to maturity, it gets this amazing range of colors, like fall colors. It looks super cool. And this is just kind of a snapshot of that. And I did the harvesting by hand. I use a European scythe, and I'm out there swinging a stick with a blade on it. It's surprisingly easy. I mean, if I were to do 5, 10, 15 acres, I'd probably need some more help. But I did this maybe in like 30 minutes. It's not that challenging. It's like paddling a boat. It's about as hard as, the canoe stroke when you're paddling a canoe. It's not super strenuous, especially if you're taking kind of little bites. You don't want to swing and try to chop, 4 or 5 feet worth of stalks. You're not going to make it through. You want to do these little chunks and just chip away at it. And this is kind of more what the seed looks like near threshing and then post-threshing and cleaning. And I do a lot of that work by hand as well. I've built my own thresher and winnower, and I just use a box fan basically. But I also use a BCS, and it's a fabulous tool if you know how to use it on the right scale. I think if you get above about 2 to 4 acres, it starts to become just too slow. You just can't do enough of the space quickly enough. And so that's why I do use it in tandem with a big tractor. I can't work up the ground necessarily as fast with the BCS, but I love the size of the beds that I can get. A higher center bed, which is smaller than the typical standard of like tractors. What I found is that 3-foot bed is a lot more ergonomical for the hand work that I do. Over 6 feet tall, the 5-foot bed is it's too big, I think. I tend to reach too much, and I'm a lot bigger fan of this smaller bed shape. So yeah, and then here's the no-till grain drill that we get to use. It's a Great Plains model. I'm not sure what the specific model number is, but we tow it behind a 100 horsepower tractor, and it is a trailer implement, which makes it somewhat flexible. And yeah, it's a fantastic tool. We don't have to mow super heavily. Like, one thing I have done with it is I've mowed corn for like flour, which it gets pretty tall, like taller than I am by quite a bit, and I was able to flail mow the corn once and run this right over it. And there's still, you know, big hunks of stalks that did not get fully flail mowed, and that grain drill didn't seem to have a problem with it. And so this is kind of late fall, actually about this time of year, just after that cover crop has come up and it's somewhat well established. As you can see, plenty of buckwheat seed can get left behind, especially if you kind of miss time. This is where I had a lot of shattering, and I had a lot of seed get left behind, and so they came up right away. They had no problem with some cooler temps germinating, but they did die as soon as it froze. And one thing I tried to do with some of these pictures is I wanted to show you guys, I see a lot of these fruiting bodies from fungi, and that is a great sign, because it's hard to know if you have a fungi growing in your soil, because that growth is typically in the mycelial network, and you're not really going to be able to witness that. So in the fall, I'll see maybe about half a dozen different species. I'm not a mycologist, I have no idea what these guys are, but they are a great indicator to see that, you know, there's stuff still living in there. So yeah, questions?
I guess we'll take questions.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to switch gears to a different environment and a different scale.
All right, my name is David Dobbins. Live in Cheney, Washington, so about 20 minutes 40 minutes, 30 minutes up the hill. Close by, I do have a different scale of operation. We're running 3,800 acres. My smallest grain drill is 12, I think I got a 10-footer somewhere. Normal operation, we're running 43 feet. We're fertilizing in row, side row band, using a disc drill, and someday you're gonna learn, just go no-till it. Quit mowing stuff, just knock it down with that tractor, drive over it, put a piece of pipe out in front, knock it over and go. You don't have time for that. Now, I come from cover crops in a totally different aspect. I have gotten into the trap of I grow cover crops to make forage, because I failed too many times trying to grow cover crop for the right reasons of just soil health and just to mix up diversity. But I've been on a road where I grew everything I could come up with on that cover crop chart. You know, I tried to get my C4s in there. Growing sunflowers is great on a hill until you slide the combine down the hill backwards in a snowstorm. Okay? Then you go to other crops and you mold them in a grain dryer. Okay, we don't like that either. Ruined my Thanksgiving. Then we go and we have buckwheat failures because it frosted on me. We then have clover or alfalfa struggles to establish. Now, what happens when we have these failures is monocultures. You have no crop. And I said after that, okay, I'm done with that. Next thing, if I'm going to grow all these species, I don't care. Throw them in the drill. They'll go out, they'll meter out, they'll be fine. But I want to harvest it with a cow or livestock. I'm not sold or directly saying cow is the only way, because cows get out just like every other livestock, but I hear worms are a hard one to keep contained sometimes too. So we got to be careful of what we're doing, what's our plan, but we also, like you were saying, there's things that are growing that I don't like now. So that's wonderful. We went 1 year, we went 2 years, I raised the triticale. That's great until it is, I'm having to rogue that, or should rogue that out of my wheat crop. So just like, well, this is different crowd, I'm not organic because I haven't figured out no-till organic on ski slopes. So if I go and plow and I do serious cultivation, I will have 6-inch divots across my field. That is more detrimental than some other things that I have to give up on, and that keeps me out of the organic certification. And that's a true, cold, hard fact in our area that I know I have to deal with. So, but when we say, what are the consequences of cover crop? We have to be honest with ourselves. You can go broke doing cover crop. If you go to the local seed dealer because you followed a chart that said, give me alfalfa, give me clover, give me half of those things, made a comment to somebody that you can't afford that. If you're going to put it in an agronomic system, you cannot afford to go buy those seeds at standard retail price, put them out there and try to terminate them 6 months later. If you let them go that long, you will go broke. And I want to be very clear about that. Because if you're going to think you're going to grow a grain crop at $4.50 in a commercial business, I don't care if it's $10 in an organic system, you can't afford to do that. You have land payments, you have to pay yourself, you have to have all these inputs that your extra fun project has to truly be making it. If you're putting in and your synthetics, I know you don't use synthetic fertilizers, but it's a real world. If you're replacing, you're going to do fish, kelp, molasses, things that are organic products, that costs you a bunch, especially when you bring it in on the semi-load. It's like, wow, I didn't know I could get that big of a bill, but I did. So I'm using these things. We're trying to use the biological functions. We're treating all these seeds, but be careful while treating naked seed, because you can also seed a little too early or a little too late. In my case, when I have a 200-acre crop failure because my cover crop was 2 weeks too late, didn't rain all summer, major drought, and I have 400 to 500 head of cattle standing in the field wondering, what's next? And hopefully the trucks are coming, and I'm losing money because I didn't have the length in the growing season. So I love cover crops. They're very interesting. They're fun. Mixes up the diversity on my farm. I do grow hay. I do have grass seed for actual seed production. I grow wheat. I got barley, canola, but trying to get those warm seasons in there, diversity, they are a challenge to mix up and keep in the system. And so I'm really wondering how we prolong the system, keep it in the rotation, because I want to do 500 acres of cover crop. I want to do 500 acres of grass. I want to do 500 acres of wheat. And I want to figure out how to intermix and keep the cows off the freeway and keep the cows out of the other crops. And I need to water them. And I have hills and all these things. But it's like figuring these things out. Cover crop is a step and a tool, and it can help us on the biological functions. But also we got to let them go. The only place on my farm that I've seen real true results is getting cover crop for 2 to 3 years. And that means I didn't always plant all those seeds. I let weeds go. But when you're trenching and building a water pipeline system for your cattle, and you can actually trench through where your cover crop was because you had root penetration, get through the hard pans. I question if your fungi's coming up, you have a hard pan underneath where your plow layer is. I would watch that, see it in the penetrometer. Those are real things. And then in the middle of summer, when your shovel bounces back at you, then, we have other issues and we're trying to break through those. But we got to give our systems time to heal from damages over the years, high compaction in wet soils. I got big iron. I got big holes from getting stuck, and I got big holes and hard compaction layers from a lot of things my grandfather did. So I'm trying to be very blunt but honest. Like, cover crops can be a great thing, but don't let them be the end all be all. That can, if you don't put it in the full scheme of things, can be a demise to your operation, especially on small and big scale. And so I don't think we have a lot of time, but I wanted to leave it with that. I got 2 minutes, okay? What else you want to know?
Does anyone have questions for anyone on the panel?
Yeah,
Who spoke?
yeah, let's just open it up because
Yeah.
we don't have that much time.
I have a question about cover crops. You said you also had pasture, or
I've created pasture.
you created pasture. Okay, with grazing, going from cover crops or using cover crops as a way to increase fertility in pasture. Thoughts on that, or like
So if you're going
strategies for
to make pasture, meaning we want pasture for the next 5 years, get perennials in your system and stick with them. If you want to stay in the annual cropping system, that's where your expense goes up. You're not going to see the bang for your buck because you're actually going to have to terminate with the cattle because you need the feed source and you're not going to get the root penetration. And if it's a drought year, then everything gets thrown out the window.
So are you doing both of those things, or are you?
Yeah, I'm doing everything I can. I've had my fights and roundabouts with NRCS. I can't get funded for fence, water systems of any kind of livestock programs because I am a certified crop ground. If I say I will turn it to pasture ground, then all of a sudden NRCS Equip says, yeah, sure, we'll pay for your seed, we'll pay for your fence, your water system, whatever, and the list goes on and on. Total asinine, it's only in Washington, but that's how it is. So, I'm seeing the results after 2 or 3 years of cover crop. I am better off in my system to use the system and be able to grow perennials selectively using the right types of grasses and alfalfa, clovers, forbs. Make those mixes, put them in certain areas, and then I have the right or the option to also go in and put up an alfalfa or a hay bale. So I have forage, so I can use intermittent times to feed livestock when, say, August, things are drying down, I'm running out of feed, I have hay to bring in, or I can prime the rumen of those animals. I have the hay from that ground to feed to them to get them out earlier, so I have a longer growing window for those livestock. I don't own $2 million worth of cattle, but I expect $2 million worth of cattle to show up. And if a cattleman brings in livestock, they need to be there for 90 days. They want to be there 180 days, but they will not show up unless you can guarantee 90 days. Trucking is too expensive to get them in and out, and that's a whole other realm, but something to think about. And the sheep people, you got to be careful too, but any livestock and infrastructure needs to be in place, need to have a plan, but you got to have it for the long term, or it doesn't make sense. Sheep can be a little more flexible, but cattle, that's the biggest experience I've had with them. So.
You mentioned alfalfa, clover, forbs, but it sounded like maybe you have a few other grasses or a few other species that you.
So I grow for seed high crest wheatgrass, but I've grown intermediate wheatgrass. But you need to really have a plan and an idea, because a fescue is going to be a shorter growing variety. A tall intermediate wheatgrass is going to be a later variety. So if you're going to mob graze and move animals, you need to plan out that you're going to flash graze, get them off, get a rest period, and then bring them around in the system. And I've also pushed the cattle into grazing some of my crested wheatgrass, messing with when is it too wet, when is it too dry, when are you too late, graze it, and then still take it for a seed. But you better have that planned out, and you better understand your fertility and how to do foliar sprays, because you will go a little too far. And I'm really good at going a little too far, but you got to know. You got to experiment, and as the people that know me, we've pushed our system way too far, and like you should have water plans before cows show up, and you should, have a brew room if you're gonna brew biology before the season, and you should do all these other things, and your planning ahead is huge, and but it's also exciting. Agriculture can be really exciting, growing plants and doing different things. And this is, in cover crops, this is one opportunity that you can grow something you've never seen before, and it's totally acceptable and it's not a weed. But also keep in mind, you can grow weeds that, because it's just an undesired, or let your buckwheat that was growing, don't terminate it. Let it grow. If it will grow until it's frosted out, let it be there. It's okay. Throw some grasses in there. It'll hold that soil. Don't let it be bare. You're going to go backwards if you have the bare soil. So
I think we have to call it for the evening, but all of us, most of us, will be here. If you have other questions, I think we're all here. Yes. I think we're all here.